Welcome, everyone. My name is Monica Maruschek, and welcome to our third in the series of peak performance webinars for the month of May. This third one is called Big Yes, Huge No, one powerful technique for saying yes to cold calling and no to procrastination. And this technique is one of my favorites. It's very impactful. It works extremely well, not just for procrastination, but also for other things that you really need to say yes to or no to in your life. This could be studying, this could be taking out the garbage, this could be eating clean. There are so many applications to this technique, and I'm very excited that you're all here with me. And as usual, I have a couple of guest presenters, guest organizers. Today we've got Gina Stracuzzi. She was with us on the first webinar, and also Ramsey Ayachi. Ramsey Ayachi is really going to be the one bringing it home today for the win, and I am here to facilitate the entire experience. Ramsey has a lot of experience with Big Yes, Huge No, and he actually will have a story for us today with one of his clients. I think he had a great experience helping someone go from total and complete fear of cold calling to a very positive experience using this technique. So just a little background on Ramsey. He is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy, and he spent the majority of his career as a CH-53 Echo helicopter pilot. For those of you that don't know, the CH-53 is the biggest helicopter in the Marine Corps inventory. It can lift your house. No kidding. This thing has 7 huge rotor blades, and I don't even know how big it is exactly, but when I deployed with the CH-53s over to the Middle East, those suckers took up the biggest square footage of that flight deck. It was enormous. It's amazing that they can even land it on the carrier. He also served as a forward air controller, where he controlled aircraft from all different services at all different altitudes, carrying all different kind of bombs. And he did an amazing job using NLP to keep himself in the right mindset for the task at hand, no matter what kind of chaos was going on around him. So he leveraged this experience with NLP. He leverages it now as a board-certified hypnotist, as a certified hypnosis instructor, and as a certified trainer in neurolinguistic programming. So he is our director of training. He does all of our training for Peak Performance Associates and Nova Hypnosis and Wellness. He helps consumers, just people off the street, change their mindset around anything that is troubling them, whether it's nail biting, smoking, or business-related concerns such as procrastination, fear of public speaking, and so on. He also trains groups. He certifies professionals in the art of hypnosis and also in the art of neurolinguistic programming for those people that want to take these skills and bring them to their business or bring them to their other profession. They have a great experience learning from Ramsey. So just for everyone's awareness, I am recording this, and I also would like to hear from the attendees if they can hear me. So just to confirm before we get into the meat, heart, and soul of the presentation, send me a quick thumbs up. Let me know that you can hear me. Just go ahead and say, yes, I can hear you. All right, great. So awesome. Gina can hear me. That's good to know.
Yes.
And it looks like Ramsey, you can hear me. Good. That's a good thing because you'll be presenting here in a moment. And Michael, got it. Awesome. And Megan. And awesome. Okay, good. I think we're all set. Everyone can hear me. Everyone can see my screen. I'm a happy camper. Ramsey, do you have anything to say about that business person that you mentioned to me before we got started that utilized big yes, huge no for changing her mindset around cold calling? Because I remember you seemed really enthusiastic about her experience.
Yeah, so she's her background quickly is thanks for the introduction, by the way. I appreciate all the kind
Of
words. And for
course.
those of you that are um, aware of military aviation, it is something that requires a lot of focus. Monica can definitely attest to her experiences where she had to change state and go into a resourceful state, just as probably moving much faster than I was. So thank you for the kind words.
Oh,
The
they're
the
all true.
client the client that Monica was referring to, she's actually a real estate agent, and she was on the verge of her daughter going off to college. She was had a lot of stressors. You know, money for many folks is a very real and tangible stressor. Um, and what was going on was that the the impact on her was resulting in a lack of desire to make cold calls, to reach out to previous clients, to ask for referrals, to get that process going, and which is a very uh, large component of real estate transactions. You know, having referrals, people advertising for you. Added to the stress was trying to get her daughter off to school and worrying about whether she was going to get an athletic scholarship or not. So she came to me, and one of her limiting beliefs was, well, I don't think people would appreciate me asking them or reaching out to request a referral from them. So we used big yes, huge no in order to break that limiting belief that she had and to replace it with a different resource. And she was actually quite successful. She turned around, and it was actually an awareness she had in order to switch real estate brokers. So she moved houses and went to a different house, and because she realized that the environment for her at the other place, even during this very simple activity, was not conducive to her success and mentorship. So after we did our work together, she switched firms or switched brokers, and then she began to experience a lot of success as she was using these techniques and these skills and the new mapping. We'll talk about that here a little bit to help her overcome what used to be a limiting belief was no longer for her. So
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you so much for that story. So just briefly, before we get into the heart of things, a few notes. Feel free to ask questions as they come to you. Definitely, that's when they're the most authentic, and that's when we want to address them. But if it's a question that may be addressed later in the program or it may take a long time to answer, please allow us the privilege of answering it at a later point in time, at a point where it will make more sense. But if I've glossed over something, just raise your hand, stop me so that Ramsey or I may clarify. And at the end of this program, please feel free to send us some honest feedback. We always welcome your feedback so that we can keep getting better and better at what we do and give you even more value in the next series. So with that, here's the overview of what we're going to be covering today. We'd like you to begin considering what procrastination might be costing you or your business. And then we're going to dive right into what exactly is beneath that procrastination. A lot of people believe the fallacy that it's a lack of willpower, or they believe it's a personal shortcoming, or it's a failure on their part. And that couldn't be farther from the truth, and Ramsey will cover all of that. Procrastination, I would say, happens more to people who are highly successful, actually. It's just that there are certain areas of their life where their mindset isn't in the right place. Ramsey's going to then continue to discuss kinesthetic anchoring and how kinesthetic anchoring is instrumental to the big yes, huge no technique. Then he's going to ask you to think about your routine. What is your routine when you get ready to conduct your business-related activities? That has a huge impact on success. And then he's going to break it down. He's going to break down the technique, big yes, huge no, and give you the step-by-step process with the goal being that we will be done by 11:45 so that you can ask questions and also get to your next event on time. So we respect your time and we look forward to ending on time. We'll just briefly gloss over also NLP and how NLP can help manage limiting beliefs. In addition to this technique, there are so many, and we'll touch on a couple of them in general so that you can know what you have to look forward to in the next series of webinars. So I'd like to ask you the question, what is procrastination costing you or your business? So if you did not procrastinate, if you woke up every day with a clear understanding of what it is you want to accomplish, and you actually set out and did those essential and important tasks right off the bat, instead of doing your dishes, instead of writing thank you cards to your family members or friends, instead of walking the dog. If you woke up every morning and did only those essential tasks that were related to productivity, to cash flow, to client retention, to obtaining referrals, as Ramsey described in his story, if you woke up and the first thing you did was one of 2 or 3 essential and important tasks related to your business success, how much more would you be able to achieve? Because procrastination has a cost, as we all know. There's the opportunity cost. If you could theoretically bill yourself at a certain hourly rate, if you could say, you know what, my time is worth X number of dollars per hour. So let's just say, you know, if you're a lawyer, $3.50 an hour, $4.50 an hour, $5.50 an hour, right? How much is it costing me this hour that I'm walking my dog? Assuming that your dog doesn't need to be walked every single day. How much is it costing me this washing of the dishes if my bill rate is $500 an hour? And when you begin to put it in terms of dollars and cents, that right there might help to begin the shift in mindset away from procrastination and towards taking action. And that's really what Big Yes, Huge No is all about, is about getting into action and increasing your productivity by taking action every day, by increasing your cash flow, by only doing those 1 or 2 or maybe 3 essential tasks to bring in more business. And when we move away from procrastination and towards productivity, we find that our day begins with a sense of purpose instead of with a sense of escape, because that's what all those little extras, all those little things that we do instead of doing what we need to, that's what they are. They're essentially escape. And so instead of escaping into the minor details of life, today's program is all about helping you step into ultimate productivity, ultimate profit and cash flow, to really align your daily activities with your values rather than aligning your daily activities with achieving a sense of escape. And Ramsey's going to go into what exactly is driving that sense of escape. What exactly is underneath that procrastination, Ramsey?
Awesome. So one of the things that's pretty interesting that I just wanted to share to give a different reframe and a different perspective is that a lot of times people come in and say one thing, hey, I'd like for you to help me with this. And then at the end of the whatever the program is that they've gone through, they discover that it's actually something else. So a lot of people using their intellectual and logical brain, the manifestation of the feeling they have is procrastination. Procrastination, we would refer to that in our practice as an action, as a verb. procrastination is not a feeling. There's a feeling that's associated with it. And what ends up happening is that we associate feelings that we're having that are related to different topics, and the manifestation comes out as an action in our lives. So when we have a feeling, it links up to an action that is the end result. In this instance, the action is procrastination. If you go backwards on the timeline, there's a feeling that's involved. And for most people, the feeling is a sense of fear. Now, fear can be caused by a lot of different things because everyone's life is different. Everyone's path to the present day is different. Even people that live in the same household, that may be brothers and sisters, even twins, they'll have different experiences in their life because every interaction they have with other people, with outside influences, is different. So back to the fear, it's typically caused from rejection. Somewhere in their mind, they've associated being rejected with the act of attempting to do something, and that rejection grows stronger and stronger because it's a response that has more familiarity in their body, or it's a sense of failure. You know, maybe someone, when they attempted something in the past, they failed at it, and therefore the information they received and the meaning they gave it was a negative state, it was a negative resource. So they don't want to experience failure anymore. So they avoid things because they don't want to fail. And if I avoid something, then I'll never fail. You can see in the world of business that that's not very conducive to operating a profitable business. To not be in action is to essentially be in a state of loss. And then finally, criticism. They're all somewhat related but different at the same time. Maybe this happens frequently. I see with a lot of high-performing folks. They may have had some influence in their life where their experience doing some kind of action resulted in a reception that was critical. Not a constructive criticism, but a critical type of criticism. The type that is wrought with sarcasm, it's wrought with anger, it's wrought with judgment. Those are different than the constructive criticism where the recipient hears it and gives it different meaning. So these three things, think about them in your life, and if there's ever a time that you find yourself going, oh God, I need to do this, but I'm not doing it, there's usually these elements that are at play underneath: the rejection, failure, criticism, all wrapped under the umbrella of a feeling of fear. Now, what we're going to talk about next is a little bit on the next slide.
Yes, absolutely. And before I move to the next slide, now that you've done such a good job, breaking down what procrastination really is, I'd like everyone to ask themselves, is procrastination a problem for you? Is procrastination a problem for you? And what do you perceive as procrastination? All right, the answers are coming in. The answers are coming in, and I'll just close it here in a second. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, awesome. Moving on. Ramsey.
Now, one of the things that we put into play is anchors. And when we're going to change behavior patterns, we want to change as many elements as possible. Usually a behavior pattern is set, or a habit is set, and it's kind of triggered on 3 different areas. It could be the stuff that you say to yourself, like a negative statement, like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to do this. Oh, this is so hard. Oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? Golly, they're going to reject me. Like, that kind of negative chatter is very insidious, and it's actually much more common than people are even aware of, and it plays in the back like a low boil, a low simmer in the back of their mind, and it patterns their behavior. So that's one element. The other one is maybe a scene. Maybe whenever they go to do something, they remember a scene. For example, one of my clients had a fear of heights, And whenever they would be close to the edge of something, they would think back to the time when they were in that same exact moment at a younger age on the experience that created that sensation for them. Even though they were 40-something years old, they would always go back to that moment and would fire the same response. So the language you tell yourself, the image that you see, and then what's happening in your body. So when we want to retrain the mind to think something differently, we want to use those same concepts of how the brain, the mind maps information. And one of the tools that we like to incorporate, because we found it to be very successful, is the use of anchoring. And anchoring can be an image, just like I said. Anchoring can be a phrase that you tell yourself. And anchoring can also be something kinesthetic. Now, one of the ones that we're going to go into a little bit more detail here, because it's not something that people usually are aware of, and they normally don't incorporate this third element of anchoring, and that's kinesthetic anchoring. And if you can think of the times that you learned something as a child, if you recall, there's a great format within the Montessori school system where when they're teaching, and really in any educational system, when they're teaching, they have children do something. They have them like touch and feel the movement. For example, when they're learning how to write letters, they actually put their hand on a letter that's outlined, or it's composed of like a rough surface like sandpaper. So they're able to move their hand around it. They experience the kinesthetic touch of the number. They're also seeing it, so they're seeing, they're feeling, and in some instances they can hear either their movement of their hand along the paper, or they're hearing the instruction coming from the teacher. Our minds like to have those kind of things. Everyone learns a little bit differently. Most people are kinesthetic. Most people have that ability. So whenever you want to think of doing something differently, or you want to break a habit, you want to try to incorporate as many of these elements as possible. I just put a couple down here, your 5 senses: see, hear, feel, smell, and taste. And then applying that same concept to mapping new resource states is what we're going to be doing with big yes, huge no.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, the next slide, the label of it is what's your routine? And this is important because I want to invite everyone who's listening right now to think of what their routine is. Oftentimes when we're working with clients or working with teams, we'll ask them this very simple question: hey, how many of you have some kind of routine that you do in the morning that supports what your outcome is? And these are very successful people, highly educated, make easily 6 figures on a regular basis. And there's no routine that supports them. There's no routine that supports them in whatever their outcome is that they desire. So I asked then the question, so in your work, is your work something that you would spend, you would basically bring attention to, once a year, once every 6 months, once every 3 months in order to be successful at work? And the answer for most people is that no, you have to essentially be an active participant in work on a daily basis. You have to be an active participant in even in relationships, a marriage, as a parent, stuff like that. So the same kind of consideration for mapping new behavior changes has its strongest effect when it becomes routine for you. So I want to invite everyone to think of these things as routine, not as just do them one time a year, and then you're good for the rest of the year. We like to coach our clients into resourceful states with us in the office, but we also like to give them the tools that are supportive of doing it on their own outside the scope of our office. So as you think of your own success and you think of your routine, how did you get to be successful? How many of you would you consider yourselves to be successful?
I have a question for you, Ramsey. Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
So earlier I referenced the fact that a lot of people think that procrastination is a personal failure, a personality flaw, or a lack of willpower. And from listening to what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that procrastination, or what is often perceived as a lack of willpower is actually lack of a routine. And that people who have quote unquote willpower are actually just people who have created a routine around what it is that they want to accomplish, and they just do that same thing every day until it becomes a habit. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but does that align with what your experience is and what you teach?
It definitely is at play, and it's a very important component of the reinforcement. So once the fear is overcome of rejection, criticism, or failure, then the new feeling is supported. It's buttressed by the routine, and the routine
Got it.
keeps people focused on what it is that is going to be helpful for them in the long run. Because the reality is that most people will experience challenge, they'll experience adversity, because nothing is 100% certain in life. And so as they move through those new challenges, those new adversity moments, or moments of adversity, the routine helps them to stay focused on what it is that is going to be the state that they want to remain in.
And the quote unquote lack of willpower then is really fear and perhaps lack of confidence, not really willpower per se. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The word willpower to me is it's kind of a cliche word, because willpower really is what's the leverage that someone has. What is the leverage that someone has? Tony Robbins likes to say, we're either running away from pain, or we're racing towards pleasure. And once that element's discovered for each client, then how do they then transform their routine to support the outcome that they're looking for? So willpower is kind of it's a it's a word that doesn't really I don't really think of it as having a lot of meaning. It's just, what is the value that you have? What's the compass that is or the leverage that's forcing you in one direction or the other?
Right. Understood.
And then the last one real quick thing, no need to go back to the other slide, but at the bottom, you know, there's a lot of benefit to observing other people that are successful, and also your own success. It's helpful to be aware of what is it that makes you successful in this one particular area of your life. What have you been doing? And the easiest thing to do is just to repeat that. What is it that you do? What are the things, the time that you're spending? What's the value in those activities? How is it paying off? Because success will always have patterns, and it'll always leave behind indicators of how you got to that point in that particular successful element of your life. And it's not a matter of, well, I'm successful and I've arrived and I don't need to continue to do any more active type of activity in order to maintain the success. It reinforces itself through routine. So as you move through your life, just kind of be aware of what kind of things that you're successful in, and what are the patterns that you're seeing in those, and then bring and incorporate those patterns into your own life.
Yes. Absolutely.
So now we're going to get started, and we're going to dive into the big yes, huge no, and provide the breakdown. Now, before we get started, there are two separate patterns, and let me just describe it in a very simplified way. For big yes, you're associating into a resource or a habit or an activity that you want to have, using something else from your past or from your imagination. Now that's big yes. The other pattern that you can use, for example, let me just describe big yes. Big yes, cold calling. So you basically bring in a resource that you've already experienced in your life, or you've imagined, or you've seen yourself doing before, and then you bring in the scenario that is the one that you want to make yes. You want to apply yes and excitement to it, which would, in this instance, as it pertains to businesses, many people get stuck with the cold calling. So you want to map the old sensation of excitement, of confidence, and conviction onto the element of cold calling. The other pattern, which is number one, is huge no. So for many people, procrastination, fear of making the introduction, or fear of working on a project, has been holding them back, and it's the element that's prevented their business from taking off. That pattern you want to associate into a resource or a feeling that you've had in the past that you were very, very much against. You're very it was a visceral reaction that you experienced when you were against it. So you're going to map that visceral response onto the act of procrastinating, so that it's now associated with that same event using a kinesthetic anchor. So those are the two types. So when I go over one, it's the same format. You're just using different language. And the first one we're going to go over is huge no. And one other word of advice, I use them interchangeably because I do reinforcing techniques with them. In what we're covering right now is the skeletal aspects of it for purposes of the webinar. But normally, to get people into motion, it's okay to use a negative catalyst or a negative motivator or negative leverage, like a huge no. But for the long term, what we've found just from our own experience is that for long-term endurance of behavior change, it's usually good to evolve into a big yes, where there is wind in your sail, because you don't want to. It's not as powerful over a long course of time to have a negative motivator keeping you inside of a certain routine. It's always better to transition for the long term over to a positive catalyst. And that's where the difference comes in. If you need to get someone to change behavior immediately, by all means, utilize huge no, but then do it with the understanding that for long-term success, and when I say long-term, I mean 5-10 years down the road, it's helpful to continue to do it with something that's positive and resourceful.
Yes. And so I'm hearing you say that when you use the word identify, you're really saying emotionally connect with something that makes you want to say no in a very powerful way, and emotionally connect very powerfully with something that makes you want to say yes, and apply those emotional states using the patterns that you're about to teach us. Apply those emotional states to whatever it is you want less of, or whatever it is you want more of.
That's absolutely correct. Yes, because I guess the best way to say the train track, I use this term in my hypnosis certification course and NLP certification courses. The train track, the common rail, is the emotional state, because all of our thoughts get transmitted into feelings in the body, whether we are aware of that or not. And so when you can identify what the feeling is clearly, then you can go and have the change and the transfer occur very easily.
Got it. All right, so let's jump into that breakdown.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, we're going to talk about a couple of things here. The first one we're going to discuss is the huge no. And just like Monica had said, what is helpful for this process, when you're going to do it for the first time, you're going to do it at home or in a place where you have peace and quiet. You don't want to do it in the middle of your office or in the middle of a board meeting, because people are going to perhaps wonder why your eyes are closed. But the intent is for you to do it in a safe environment, for you to do it in a place where it's quiet, where you will not be disturbed. And then, using the kinesthetic anchor that we're going to create for you, then applying it in those other environments where you may be in the office. So just know that what we're doing is we're remapping so that you can have the resource to use, the kinesthetic resource to fire the emotional state that you want, and also the feeling. So that's how this is going to be presented. So the first thing that I'd like for you to do is just, for those of you that are joined us on the webinar, just go ahead and let your eyes close on down. It's easier for you to map it very quickly with the eyes closed. I just use the term closed eye process. And for the first step, just think of something that you feel quite strongly against, or it's maybe a time when you had to say no really emphatically, like with a lot of intensity. For example, for those of you that may be struggling, when I was working with the real estate agent, she remembered a time when one of her kids, they were in the pool, and she and her husband had turned and looked in another direction, and she remembered a time when she looked back from looking in an opposite direction towards her son, and her son had blacked out and he was at the bottom of the pool, and they thought he had drowned and died. So she screamed out loud, "No." And she remembers that very vividly because it was such a visceral reaction for her. And they both leapt into the pool and saved their son and turned him over on his side, and he was fine after that. But it was that kind of emotional response that you want to connect with. Now, if it's something that you just disagree with too, like maybe a political view or a religious view or something like that, that can work as well. But just try to make it as strong as possible. And what I'd like for you to do now with your eyes closed is just think of that scene. Place yourself right back there and build the scene up. Notice the feeling that you have. And you're going to begin to experience something in your body. Connect with how your body actually feels. The feeling is going to have some strongest location in your body. It could be a region or it could be a specific part. Is it got a color? Is it moving around? Does it have a temperature? And give that feeling life. And think of this time again as if you're there. You can make the colors more vibrant. You can make the sounds more intense. You can remember other people now in the scene that were there with you, if there was anyone. There's got to be something really strong. And if you go ahead and go to the next slide. Now, what I'd like for you to do, still with your eyes closed, just listen to what I'm saying. There's a little bit of administrative inertia that's going on here as I'm coaching you through this, but I'd like for you to just think of your arm. So from your shoulder, from the top of your shoulder to your elbow area is one sector. And then from your elbow down to your fingertips is a second sector. And for this one, let's just use our shoulder down to our elbow. And you're going to just hold your hand in front of you. So it's almost like you're doing putting your left hand or right hand on top of your shoulder. And you're just going to stroke down from your shoulder all the way to your elbow. You're going to just stroke that motion. This is the kinesthetic anchor that we're setting. So now, with your eyes remaining closed, as you're stroking down, I'd like for you to say, in that same scenario, seeing that same situation, say the word no.
No.
Feel what you're feeling. Experience what you're feeling. Notice all the details. Place yourself right back in there. No. As your arm goes down, you say the word no. Now, you don't have to yell it, but you have to say it with conviction, as if you're telling yourself, oh my God, no, 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 no. And you do that, I would say do it at least 10 times. Next slide, please. And now after you place that, you're ramping up that neural pathway. And each time that you're doing that, you're associating the downward stroke of your arm from the shoulder to the elbow with that sensation, with that scene. So now what I'd like for you to do is just go ahead and let your eyes open, look around, take in some conscious mind stuff. And then I'd like for you, before I ask you to close your eyes again, just think of a habit that you want to break. Let's just say that it's this procrastination. Now, I'd like for you to remember a time when you were procrastinating last. Build that scene up. Allow yourself to go into that feeling where you're starting to judge yourself. You're having that fear of failure, whatever it is. And then go ahead and close your eyes on down. Now, place your hand back on your shoulder. You're going to do the same downward stroke from the same shoulder to elbow location, and you're going to also say the word no. So here we'll go. We'll do it another 10 times. Again, you don't have to yell it, but you do need to say it with conviction. And each time, build the scene up of you procrastinating. So here we go. No, 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 no. And what you've just done, next slide. What you've just done is you've associated now the act of that stroke from your shoulder down your elbow with an old memory of something that was related to, in this instance, the real estate agent and her child drowning. You've associated it now into the scene where you are previously procrastinating. And with that same intensity, now you can take this tool and you can fire the tool by just stroking down your shoulder to your elbow and saying the word no to yourself. You could say this in a boardroom, and it's very subtle where no one would even know what you're doing. They probably think that you're just scratching your shoulder. No. And you could say that quietly to yourself, but you're invoking now the same response, the same visceral response toward the act of procrastinating. If you're sitting there looking at your phone, you're not making the phone call. You could just place your hand there and do that stroking motion and say no. No to procrastination.
And Ramsey, I know that right now we're talking primarily to people in the sales industry, but if they wanted to apply this to other aspects, or maybe someone's listening who is a student or a professional in a different occupation, this can be applied to other things, correct? It could even be applied to weight loss. If I remember correctly, there was another person who learned how to say no to cookies, right?
Oh yeah, that was a weight loss client, and we used this process for something that she really did not like. It was I can't remember the food. It was like some kind of seafood product. She would hurl whenever she thought of it, and oh no, it was food poisoning. It was food poisoning from a place that she had gotten food from, and we associated the feeling of her being laying down on the bathroom floor and being violently ill with the food product that she had. That it was, the thing that she wanted to break, the habit that she wanted to break. So totally useful in all sorts of areas. And what you can do, what's so cool about it, is they can just run the kinesthetic anchor and say it quietly to yourself. Now, the stronger this becomes, the better, or the more you do it and the more emphatically you do it, the stronger the sensation becomes. And you'll notice that it'll just be one of those things where you can just do it one time in the future, and you're sending a signal to your mind that, no, I'm not going to procrastinate. I'm going to get into action. You can do this wherever you are.
What this also sounds like to me is we're teaching our brain how to recategorize certain events, people, processes, where maybe before doing the huge no, we were unclear and uncertain about, is this a good thing, is this a bad thing, and a confused mind does nothing, right? Like that's the common saying that we hear all the time, a confused mind does nothing. So it sounds to me like what huge no does and big yes in the opposite direction is that it's like a huge decision that this is not something I want to do, and then we're really driving the point home using that connection with that emotional state of no, 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 so that the brain is unequivocally, without a doubt, convinced that this thing, this activity is a no. Would you say that that's part of it?
Absolutely. You're drawing a line in the sand. You're drawing a line in the sand, and that's what the part of your mind that maps or that takes these elements of fear, rejection, criticism, or failure and manifest them into procrastination is the same part of your mind that you're telling, that's it. I'm done. I'm done with you feeling this way. There's a new sheriff in town, and
Right.
this is what we're gonna do.
Yes. And even though we don't have time to go over big yes in as much detail as we went over big no, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's essentially the same process. It's just that now the person is connecting with something that they were intensely experienced intense positive emotion about. And with that same connection to what the feeling is like in their body, they're going to anchor that yes, that positive, strong positive emotion to a movement. Do you use the same movement? Is it the stroking of the arm, or is it something else?
Yeah, great question. And the two differences are, obviously you're saying yes because it's something that you believe in and you firmly believe in it. And then remember how I broke the arm into two different sectors? The first one that we use for the huge no was from the shoulder to the elbow. You want to definitely use something different for the big yes. So you could use the same arm, and if you do, I recommend a different anchor. So a stroke from the elbow down to the fingertips, and that way it's just you keep them separate in your mind because they are mapped to feeling a certain way. Like I just did that to myself, and I'm remembering the scene where the young man is or the young woman was underwater, drowning. Because as a parent, you don't ever want that to happen, and that's enough of a response. Even though that wasn't my scenario, just that action there made me see that scene again, and it got me into action to think about no longer procrastinating. So when it comes to yes, pick a different sector of the arm, or you could use the other arm just to keep it even more distinct, and associate something you feel very emphatically about. One of the things that I've helped clients with in the past is, how did you feel when you were courageous and you felt like you were on top of the world and you felt excited? What were you doing? Oh, I just scored a goal, and I just hit a home run, or I just made this sales call and landed a great deal. We just got this client, we just sold this, multi-million-dollar home. They take that feeling and then you use that to associate into the element. And in this instance, just using sales terms, cold calling. So you take the moment of that huge win, you associate it with the kinesthetic anchor, open your eyes, close your eyes, place yourself back into a moment when you need to make some phone calls and reach out for referrals. And then you just keep doing yes, 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 yes. And pretty soon your subconscious part of your mind, which is the area which stores the memories and thoughts and associates the meanings to them, will just go, okay, I guess they want to respond differently. Hey guys, let's send out the chemicals and hormones or transmitters that reinforce that feeling in the body.
I use this technique a lot without even realizing it. I remember I used it towards the beginning of my career, and I had a very positive reaction when in flight school I was told that I had been awarded a spot in a Harrier flight program. And I remember very clearly throwing my head back and yelling, yes! Oh my God, yes! Because I couldn't believe it. It was just out of the blue. It was unexpected. I mean, I had hoped that I would get it, but I didn't really, want to raise my hopes too high. And when they finally said it, I was like, I literally jumped out of my seat. My hands were in the air. It was a total, like Olympic victory style celebration inside my body. And later in my career, so a couple of years later, when I wouldn't want to do something like I wouldn't want to fly at 5:30 in the morning, or I wouldn't want to prepare for a brief because it was with someone that I didn't really want to fly. Situations like that. I remember I had a different anchor. It didn't involve a downward stroking of my arm. It involved like a fist movement with my hand.
Mm-hmm.
But I would bring that to bear, bring that yes to bear when I would be thinking about what I didn't want to do. And I don't think I knew at the time that that was the huge no, big yes technique, but I'll tell you that it got me into action. It got me to do a lot of things that I didn't want to do with a smile on my face, so I actually enjoyed the process. And I am pretty sure that I would have been much more reluctant and probably much less successful if I hadn't have brought that yes to bear in those scenarios.
Totally. That's a great example, and that's very true. And it's whatever works. The three elements that we were talking about earlier: what you say to yourself, what you see, and then what your body's experiencing. What we're doing here is triggering the part that your body's experiencing with an anchor. We're triggering an anchor to start the process. And for many people, when they're learning how to do this kind of stuff and change behaviors, it's important to make it a process for them so they can execute. And then what's really interesting is that they'll begin to refine it on their own and then come up with things like what you were just talking about, which is awesome. I mean, I can just see, the fist pump in the air and the transformation of the perspective of what's going on, where you're like, yes, get out of my way. I'm ready to, I'm ready to attack this now.
Yes.
So.
And that's actually an answer to a question that we received where someone asked, you guys are really well trained in this technique, in these techniques, but how easy is it for stressed out people who aren't trained as much as you guys to use these techniques? So in answer to this gentleman's question, essentially when I employed this technique without even knowing it back in the military, it was pretty easy to use, pretty easy to implement. And I'll bet that a lot of people listening to this have already used this technique unknowingly. They just did it in a scenario where it came naturally. But what you're doing here, Ramsey, is you're giving them the actual duplicatable process so that they can consciously do this when they need to do it, not just, by accident in a scenario where it comes naturally and it comes easily. And that's really the key to success that we bring to the table for business people or students or athletes, is we formalize the process in their mind so that they know how to do it over again rather than doing it by accident, which most successful people do use these techniques. It's just that they're using them by accident. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. Totally. And that's back to the slide previously, to the breakdown of huge no, big yes. Routine.
Oh, yes.
Routine.
No routine. Absolutely. And this is really one of my favorite examples of neuro-linguistic programming. Everything you just described is a pattern. It's a pattern of language, it's a pattern of movement, it's a pattern of thought that brings about a certain emotional state. And that's really what NLP is all about. It's a formalized a coding of these patterns that people do naturally, successful people do naturally, because like you said, success leaves clues. And all of those clues have been collected and cataloged inside of neuro-linguistic programming. So it's essentially a code for successful living and successful communication. Would you agree with that definition, Ramsey?
Totally. It is like somebody was walking around with a quill and some parchment paper, and they're observing successful people, and they cataloged it and then put it in a codified format, and then made it available for people to execute and to enjoy the fruits of those processes.
Yeah, and those people that came before them. And it allows people to master themselves, to master their fear, to master their thoughts. Really, NLP is about personal mastery. And that's how it allows us to help overcome procrastination. It allows us to pace ourselves, meaning connect with how you feel now. Connect with the feeling of procrastination. That's what pacing is. And then leading, connect with how you want to feel. Connect with that big yes, or connect with that huge no. related to the things that you want to accomplish or the things that you want to do less of. And this is just an example of mental mastery, because wherever our focus goes, our energy flows. That's another one of my favorite sayings. Wherever our focus goes, our energy flows. So if we can focus on a huge no when we want to say no to something, whether it's procrastination or cookies or fear, and we focus on the big yes of what we do want to feel, which is confidence and a big yes to taking action, everything we say to ourselves is a suggestion. And constantly throughout the day, the questions that we ask ourselves lead us to suggest to ourselves, supportive, resourceful, encouraging belief systems or limiting beliefs. So it's just a matter of more resources at our disposal, more yeses at our disposal, and fewer no's weighing us down and limiting our actions. And all of this essentially is what we collect over time and we assemble into a self-limiting story. And it's this collection of beliefs that results in either a self-limiting story or an empowering one. So today we covered big yes, huge no. Thank you so much, Ramsey. It's really obvious how much success people can have with this technique and how much success you've had in teaching it to others and using it to help them reframe their situation. Now in
Yeah,
June,
totally. Appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. And in June, I'm sure you're going to join us again for our new upcoming series. We're finalizing the details of what we're going to cover in these series, and we're going to have information posted on our website next week. Very likely, the webinars will be at the same time, same place, Wednesdays at 11 a.m. in June, and in all likelihood in July. It seems that we're getting a lot of positive feedback on these webinars, and we look forward to continuing to provide value to our clients. So as I mentioned last week, we have the Mental Mastery Bootcamp, which takes this technique and many others and applies them to real-world, real-life scenarios. The Mental Mastery Bootcamp will take place in Falls Church, and the NLP coaching certification will take place this summer. We still do have some early bird pricing available to those who have registered for the webinar. So please visit our website and register today for these events so that you can take advantage and apply these techniques in your life in a way that leads to success and personal mastery. So we've already taken questions and it's already time to wrap up. So if you have additional questions, please email us. You can email me or Ramsey with your questions and we will definitely respond, and we look forward to helping you in any way we can. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us on this webinar. Thank you so much to everyone who registered for this webinar. And for those of you who are watching this perhaps after the fact on our website, please remember to sign up for the upcoming series so that you can continue to improve and make progress in every area of your life. Thank you so much, and I look forward to being online with you next month. Thanks so much.